Hey there, good people in crypto land. I'm Matt Leising, and this is my podcast, Decent People. Welcome back to the conversation. You might have noticed we took a bit of a hiatus. It's been several weeks since we've had a show, but I'm happy to say that we've got about 6 or 7 episodes lined up to be coming out in the next few weeks. Just needed a break, needed to recharge the podcast kind of juice, if you know what I mean. And so now we're all back. And in a few weeks, we're going to switch to a slightly different format. There will be a little bit more on that coming up. And I hope everybody enjoys the new ideas we have for the show. Before that, let's get to today's conversation. I spoke with Jess Houlgrave. She's the CEO at WalletConnect, which is kind of in the back end and allows websites to connect to wallets in a secure way. Jess has a really interesting background. She served on the Bank of England Central Bank Digital Currency Engagement Forum. She was an analyst at Credit Suisse back in 2010. And she is licensed in antiquities trafficking and art crime. So you don't want to mess with Jess because she will come after you. That link to art is sort of one of the things that got her into crypto when she realized that, the digital world had changed when NFTs now could be authenticated and verified, and therefore they could be collected and valued in ways that were never possible before. We talked about how she loves to ski when she's not working, and just had a wide-ranging, great conversation. So I hope you enjoy it. As always, please remember to give us a like, give us 5 stars, give us a review wherever you're listening to this, and thanks so much for your support. Hi, Jess. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Matt. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. You are the CEO of WalletConnect, which we will get into in a lot of detail. But I wanted to start by kind of an observation I've made recently is I've had a lot of really interesting conversations just in the past few weeks with different projects that are all wallet related. And it seems like wallets are having a moment right now. I talked to somebody at SukuPay, which has created a crypto wallet with one click. There are people working at Beam. There's Lit Protocol. And, I wasn't searching this out, but it just feels like right now, wallets are kind of at the forefront of a lot of folks' minds. And I think account abstraction has something to do with that. So we'll get into that. But I know this might sound like I'm right in your wheelhouse here, but do you think wallets are having a moment right now?
100% they're having a moment. Wallets have always been very important in crypto, right? We've thought of them as the place that we store our crypto assets. What I think that this new wave of interest in wallets is about, though, is the fact that for crypto to be really useful, we need utility, i.e. we need apps that are giving us value, and we need usability. We need the ability to actually interact with those apps easily. And I think it's these two things combined that are driving the industry forward. At WalletConnect, we're purely focused on that usability part. And this is also part of that narrative about wallets. So how do I use my wallet? How do I engage with apps using my wallet? You touched on account abstraction. How do we do things like gas sponsorship to make it easier for people to interact with apps? Ultimately, things like payments, things like identity are also going to be using the same kinds of key management, same sorts of wallets that we have today. And so I think that this resurgence or new wave, let's call it, of interest in wallets is really driven by this acknowledgement from the industry that we've got a lot of infrastructure there right now, but we have to make it usable in order to drive the industry forward.
That's a great way of putting it. I feel like there is a lot of infrastructure, but maybe we've got a bit of a roadblock with the wallet technology or the user experience right now. I know there's not a lot of people out there who will say that, the crypto wallet experience is great. And I wonder, I feel like in past bull markets, there's usually been some sort of innovation that's sort of led the way. And I'm not sure if that's in this case, but why do you think it is right now that all these projects are sort of coming out with big improvements to the wallet experience?
I think for me, it's probably that we're reaching the stage now in crypto where we know we need to onboard new users. And I think we've also reached a maturity in terms of understanding that we can't just build things and expect people to come to us. We have to deliver them great user experiences. So no longer are we building applications in crypto that are designed for other crypto geeks to play around with. And I've been one of those crypto geeks for a long time. I was more than happy to go through the pain of my seed phrases, going to somewhere else to fund that wallet, moving the funds back, interacting. Like, I'm super happy to go through that 95-step process because I'm a crypto nerd and I love to play with new apps, new games, things like this. But the reality is that the vast, vast majority of the 7.999 billion other people out in the world aren't going to do that, right? They're used to these very seamless, very intuitive Web2-like experiences. Yeah. And I hate the phrase, we have to onboard the next million users. For me, it's we have to take crypto to where they are. We have to meet them where their expectations are. And that means totally rethinking what the wallet experience is. What is a seed phrase? How do we provide better security? How do we provide backup accessibility? How do we create much more intuitive and nice interfaces? How do we stop having to do two to three clicks between the wallet and app just to access and take an action? And all of these things are ultimately what's going to drive crypto forward. And the time is now because the rest of the infrastructure in this space is scalable and it's big, and we know it can deliver on the games, on the payment systems that we want, but the usability isn't there. And that's where I think that there's this big interest right now in how do we make usability better. That's
a really interesting point. And it made me think, do you think even crypto nerds want an easier user experience? Are they do you think folks are who've been in this for 10, 15 years are sort of come on, it should be easier for me, even though I know how to do all these different steps. I'd like it to just be a one-click kind of experience.
For me, the whole of Web3, why I love Web3 is about giving people choice and control, right? So I don't think that we should be saying this is the only way forward. I think it's really important that we have optionality and that people can choose where they want to sit on the spectrum of hardcore cold storage seed phrases in my mind. I've never written it down, but I can sing those 24 words and recover my Bitcoin wherever I am, to actually I want to use an embedded wallet that's facilitated by social login, and anywhere on that spectrum. And actually what we're seeing, we did this really interesting consumer survey earlier this year. We looked at a bunch of different kind of personas within crypto. So they were all sort of crypto native. And what it showed is that most people have a number of different wallets that they use for a number of different things. And for me as a consumer, if I just draw this back to how I would think about this, what I want for my life savings and the security that I need around that, how offline I want that to be, and what I want for buying an NFT that I'm going to play in a new game that I don't even, they're different things. And so I'm going to want different wallets. They're going to have different features. They're going to have, different levels of security, different levels of being decentralized. And that's okay because I have the choice then. I think what we've struggled with in the past is that it's been seed phrase or nothing. And I love now that we can offer a range of different things to different users and that people will come through these easy entry points. And ultimately, I hope we'll move them down that self-custody curve because that's what crypto is all about. But it doesn't, but people can sit anywhere on that spectrum.
I didn't even know that memorizing your seed phrase was an option. That would not work for me. So there's that. Yeah. And I love, obviously, your life savings is one place, your degen, wallet is another thing entirely. And that makes so much sense. So I loved, just switch gears for a second. I loved seeing on your Twitter profile that you were there with a snowboard. Have you been snowboarding?
Skis, actually.
Oh, those are skis?
Yeah, they're just big powder skis. I love to ski. Yeah. I'm a bit of a workaholic, but when I'm not skiing, when I'm not working in the winter, that was a Freudian slip.
Yeah, it was.
When I'm not working in the winter, the way that I switch off is to go skiing. In the summer, I like to sail and be on a boat. That's how I kind of grew up. So I have to do something sporty to take my mind mind off of work, and skiing is definitely one of those things.
And you're in Portugal, so I'm incredibly jealous that you've got all of that European skiing right kind of on your doorstep, because not only is it amazing from everything I've ever seen, but it is so much cheaper than skiing here in the United States. And that really kind of pisses me off.
It's definitely cheaper. I do love to ski in the US. I do a great trip every year with friends to Utah, because I would say that the powder that we get in Europe is non-existent to what you get in the US. But my other favorite thing about Europe is the food on the slopes is delicious. So it's always trying to find a balance of like powder, good food, cheaper skiing, and trying to fit it all in.
I love Utah as well. And speaking of sailing, it's funny, I've got my Two Harbors t-shirt on. This is where I go.
Nice.
Catalina Island, right off the coast of LA, on my sailboat.
Amazing.
So, yeah, I love both of those things. So let's go back a little bit. You started out, you went to Oxford and you got it was a master's in econ and management, and then you worked at Credit Suisse for a while as an analyst. You were right there right after the financial crisis, 2010 to 2013. How was that? Has that informed your take on crypto and what you're trying to do, as you said, to create an alternative system and give people choices?
For sure. One of the things that I wrote about actually when I was an undergraduate at Oxford was the history of monetary systems.
All the way back to shells and whatnot?
All the way back to shells, exactly. Okay. There's a book by Niall Ferguson called The Ascent of Money. And like this for me is just a text that I go and read every couple of years, because I think it's so interesting how we think about the evolution of these systems for humankind. And joining Credit Suisse after the financial crisis, I actually did a lot of work with the UK Treasury, thinking about the buyouts of RBS and Lloyds, which were the two big banks in the UK that struggled as part of the financial crisis. And so I was kind of like witness to a lot of this firsthand and seeing how just like fundamentally broken this system was. And so the combination of that like history of money that had been fascinating to me since I was an undergraduate, seeing these things. When I learned for the first time about Bitcoin, I was just like instantly fascinated that this was like monetary evolution in real time, right? Like I was like, okay, I'm witnessing the birth of a new form of money. And that's what kind of piqued my interest. And it's still what drives me today, because I think that, sure, we had the great financial crisis and this was like awful in the UK and it messed up a bunch of things globally as well. But actually, like beyond that, even now we're pretty lucky in the UK. We have relatively robust institutions. We have relatively robust government, although we can debate that over a glass of wine. But there are so many places around the world that still have absolutely nothing, and where institutions are fundamentally failing people. And I think we're going to see the rate of institutional failure increase as we see more issues with climate change, with migration, with, political changes, that the idea of being able to contribute in a small way to creating a system that supports people in a better way is really motivating for me.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And it was fascinating. I was at Bloomberg News throughout the financial crisis and just seeing firsthand
interesting.
Yeah, how broken the system was, how much risk could build up kind of behind the scenes without anybody knowing about it. And then when that risk was revealed, realizing nobody knew where it sat and, banks were failing left and right. And I think it's also, you were there. I remember, this is something not a lot of people remember, but that era, like 2010 to 2012 and 13, banks made a lot of money. They came out of that in really good shape. Like it sounds crazy, but I remember profits were at record levels. The governments around the world had just kind of stepped in and made sure that the global banking system didn't collapse. And that just like flowed through to the bottom line on those same banks that had just like brought the world to the brink. And it's kind of one of those things that just like kind of infuriates you once you kind of understand it at that level. And then I think I'm so glad you mentioned the other parts of the world, because I think folks like us in the Western world, we still are like, what is crypto good for? Or, where can I use it? And it's something that hasn't penetrated our daily lives, but in other parts of the world, in Africa, South America, Asia, where there aren't the institutions or there isn't the banking infrastructure in place, it's having a fundamental, effect on those parts of the world.
Yeah.
And that's something I wish we could get that story better understood by folks like in the US and in Europe and the UK, because I still get really kind of frustrated seeing people say that there's no use case for crypto.
100%. And I think you only have to look at like international money remittance, the flows going between different people and different nations to realize that actually there's a huge role that crypto is already playing. I had an amazing story the other day from a friend who's from South America who works in crypto, and his parents were moving and they put their entire life savings into crypto and literally took it across the border with them on a ledger. And they didn't tell him that they were doing that. He found out about that afterwards, but he was like, wow, unfortunately, there's so many people who are driven to these lengths and these extremes. And I think it's really powerful that we can build something that gives them that optionality.
Yeah.
And you're right, it's being really used today. And for me, prior to WalletConnect, I was working in payments. So I saw this sort of firsthand, some of the magnitude of this movement. And crypto has real product market fit there already. There's a lot of other places it doesn't yet, although I believe it will come, but certainly payments, remittances, in many parts of the world, I think it's already very powerful.
Yeah, I mean, several different global payment networks that have been created that are beyond the reach of governments or corporations. I mean, who needs that, right? So, and I've been writing also, I think another, like along that same line, huge firms like BlackRock are now, they're sitting up and taking notice. Obviously, BlackRock has their Bitcoin ETF and they're doing very well there, but they're also now the largest issuer of tokenized treasury securities, and that's another, real world assets getting put on the blockchain, because I think BlackRock is seeing the efficiencies they can gain from using these networks like Ethereum or what have you are so much better than the current financial state. And the treasury market is enormous. It's trillions of dollars. But as I wrote about a lot when I was a reporter, like it's a very inefficient system, and it's not great, and it's kind of old and creaky and being held together by duct tape and bubble gum, So I think what these systems offer is just really something amazing. And folks like BlackRock are not sitting by and waiting. They're jumping right in, which I think is hugely bullish.
Definitely.
So another part of your background that I found fascinating was your art background and just your I guess, love of art. And you went to Sotheby's Institute of Art. And I love the thesis that you wrote, the title, Blockchain, a critical assessment of use within the art ecosystem. I tried my hardest to find that online. I'm not sure it's anywhere.
It used to be. If it's not already, if it's not still out there, I'll send you a copy.
I would have loved to have read it, but I wondered, and you've done a lot with art and blockchain. Did art bring you into blockchain? Was that your path into this world, or how did that fit in? Or you mentioned Bitcoin, but obviously people weren't using Bitcoin for like NFTs or things like that. But so was the art application to blockchain uses like kind of what really drew you in?
I think it was like this. It was a merging of two passions that I never thought would meet one another in many ways. My interest in money and economics, and my love of the arts. The only other way that I'd ever thought about them coming together would be like I open a gallery or something, which is probably pretty unlikely. So for me, it was just this spark when I realized that, learning about Bitcoin and then digging into the technology, which ultimately is this ledger. And then I was also thinking about the art world, some of the challenges that exist in the art world around provenance, around things like this. And, people were already, certainly wasn't the person to invent this. People were thinking about, okay, how do we use blockchains to, do other things other than just use them to record the movement of cryptocurrency? Can they be used to store other things? And so it was this sort of like emergence of the two. And it's funny that you say that Bitcoin was never used for that, because the first NFTs in my mind are the colored coins that we had on Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. And so this is going back a long time. A great artist called Rhea Myers, she actually was producing colored coins on Bitcoin that were sort of trading as NFTs. But already by 2015, 2016, we had a bunch of artists who were sort of like thinking about and playing with crypto to create art. And one of the things that I've always loved, and that one of the reasons I love art, is that I think artists approach problems differently. They think critically about things in a way that, you know, certainly with my like more maths oriented brain, I don't. I think very logically. And artists have always been at the forefront of technology in many ways, whether it was like Leonardo da Vinci, who was an artist who was also inventing like the first flying machines, all the way through to some of the artists that we have today who are working on crypto, working on its like social impact, working on how we should think about decentralization. There's this whole spectrum of artists that really, I think, push technology forward, think about it critically, and talk about it critically. Yeah. And so it was this merging of the two worlds, being surrounded by some of these great artists in London who were actually working on this at the time, that sort of brought all that together. And then when I was at Sotheby's, I had the opportunity to write this thesis on how I saw blockchain beginning to be used in the art ecosystem.
That's really cool. And that would have been just a year or two before, I think, something like CryptoKitties. Did that sort of grab your attention and sort of show you something maybe that you hadn't seen before?
Yeah, so there were a bunch of precursors to CryptoKitties that never kind of took over in the same way that we saw CryptoKitties ultimately nearly break Ethereum. But there are a bunch of other things that we saw. There were the rare Pepes. There was something called My Curio cards. There were CryptoPunks. We had seen this sort of like crypto art movement taking place. And all of that is actually really well documented by Jason Bailey, who's a great friend of mine. I think he's the best like crypto art historian. And I remember at the time speaking with him and a bunch of other people building in this space, just about like how every single time one of these projects launched, we were seeing something new, something innovative. What I loved, of course, about CryptoKitties was the kind of the gameplay element to it. You didn't just have a card that you collected. You could breed them. It would create another cool CryptoKitty, maybe a rare one. And so for the first time, then we saw this like this intersection of gaming and crypto and art and collectibles that has ultimately, I think, set the standard and set the tone for so much of what we've seen in the NFT and gaming space today.
Yeah, for sure. And I loved, at least initially, I loved the idea that artists could sort of keep track of their work and earn royalties on secondary sales and tertiary sales and on and on. And it was really kind of a disappointment for me when that sort of system broke down. How did you feel about that? And do you think that that's still something that artists can rely on, or is that kind of ship sailed, do you think?
I really hope it hasn't sailed, because I think that artists create so much value for us as humans. Just they create value for humanity, and often they're not rewarded for that. So I really hope that it hasn't. I've been buoyed to see some projects, including right at the chain level, implement new standards such that royalties can be embedded. They can't be just removed because the platform doesn't want them to be, but they're really embedded in the NFT itself. And the other thing that I've been really buoyed by as well is this notion that artists are beginning to learn about a different system, a different way of distributing their art, different way of engaging with their collector base, which I hope also informs them and challenges them to think differently and to make sure that they do get royalties. Because the irony of royalties is it's not like a creation of the blockchain. This is something that's existed for a really long time, and in many places is law. If a secondary transaction takes place for an artwork, technically, the buyer is obliged to pay a royalty.
Wow, I didn't know that.
It's just that so much of this happens behind the scenes. The artist never knows. There's no way of enforcing it. And so it's not that we've created something new. It's just that we've created a way of maybe being able to enforce these laws in a better way.
Better enforcement mechanism. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I hope that we can still use this technology in that way. And I hope that will be the case. Yeah.
I'll tell you, I've been around here a while. I don't want to say how long I've been covering this, but when artists kind of came into the space with the NFT sort of boom, it was so great because it was this whole new group of people who are fascinating and really interesting. And they just injected all of this kind of fun and creativity. And, up to then it's sort of been sort of like coding kind of geeks and like, folks that were just really interested in what they could do on the tech side. And now you had this whole new explosion. Folks, like Seth Goldstein, what he's been doing with his movable galleries around the world and all the artists. So that was really great. And I love it to this day. And I wonder, talking about the enforcement mechanism, one thing I remember being surprised about was that there's the NFT, which has its own smart contract language. And then there's like OpenSea, which has its own smart contract language. And those don't often merge or mesh. And so that's why people were able to separate the royalty aspect to secondary sales. And I wonder, we're still pretty early in that era. So I'm hoping maybe the tech will evolve there. Like you were saying, now you can embed this mechanism into an NFT and it can't just be removed. So there's a race for the bottom at some platform. Kind of like what we're talking about with wallets, they've come a long way. So I really hope that happens because I just, as someone who loves the arts and definitely loved that idea that artists could continually make money from their work in perpetuity. That's a good big one. I love that. And it just made me sad when it sort of went away.
Yeah.
Okay. So another thing, staying on this, is that you are licensed in antiquities trafficking and art crime. What are you okay? So I think you do this by day, and then at night you go out and like you hunt down folks that are like stealing pieces from a museum, or what are you doing with this license?
That's a funny one. I'm guessing that's hidden deep down in my LinkedIn somewhere.
I'm a reporter. I can do some research.
I can imagine. When I was studying art, one of the things that I found most deeply fascinating was the underbelly of the art world, the fakes, the forgeries, the smuggling of antiquities that takes place. Partly I'm interested in it because I care deeply about cultural heritage, and in the same way that I care about like individual sovereignty, I think it's sad when artifacts are moved from the places that they belong. And there are a lot of things that I believe should be in public collections, that are part of like this incredible heritage that cultures have, that end up sitting on a shelf somewhere in someone's house, and nobody can learn from them. Nobody can do things with them. There's legitimate reasons why some of these things are in private collections. But when it's done illegally, it really annoys me.
So it sits on some guy's yacht in Dubai and nobody ever sees it, right?
And then there's also just this like kind of fascination with how the world works that I have. And we all know that some parts of the world work in these dark and mysterious ways. So when I was studying art, one of the things I really dug into and did a lot of extra learning about was this space of antiquities. And the other reason that I find it fascinating, and there are parallels to why I find crypto fascinating, is because the art world sort of like is a combination of different laws. It's very, very global. Things move around. There has to be a lot of agreements between different governments about these things. It's a little bit like global taxation. There is no global taxation law. It's just a combination of different laws.
Is it treaties and things like that? Does it get to that level?
A lot of treaties, a lot of, just like declarations, a lot of involvement by UNESCO and other kind of like global institutions, sort of self-regulating. And so it's this like multi-stakeholder world that's very, very fascinating. And actually it's funny when you think about crypto, it's also like there's no global crypto regulation, right? We're operating in this global environment, but actually where we're subject to a lot of interacting national and sort of like individual governments trying to operate together. And I think that that's a that's sort of like a barrier for crypto. It's also an opportunity in many ways. But it's really interesting thinking about how all of these things work together.
Yeah, thinking of that and about, how certain artwork can be hidden away in somebody's home. One of the things I love about NFT art is, and people much smarter than me have made this point, is that you can own that piece, but then the world can also see it because it's, in the public realm as well. So it doesn't get put on somebody's wall and only, people who are visiting that person's home get to view that piece of art. This is art for everyone, because it's on the public blockchain. So I love that about it. So do you have a badge?
Do I have a badge?
For your license in antiquities trafficking and art crime.
That I can flip, like a police warrant card? No, I wish I did. How cool would that be?
All right, we need to get you a badge. Yeah, we need to get you a badge.
For my alter ego. Yeah, maybe that's what I'll do next.
The cover is you go skiing in Zurich, and then, by night you go out and you hunt down these folks that are auctioning off secret pieces of art in the back of some gallery. And it's a good...
You're making me sound a lot cooler than I am. I like it.
Okay. All right, good. That's my job. Okay. All right. So shifting back to crypto a little bit more, you're also a member of the Bank of England Central Bank Digital Currency Engagement Forum. Listeners of this podcast probably know what a central bank digital currency is, but it would be a digital asset issued by, say, the Treasury in the United States, or the Bank of England, or would it be the Treasury, I guess, in England? So this is a tough one, and I would love to know where you're coming into this forum at, because while I can see the appeal of this idea for like a truly digital dollar that's on a blockchain or a digital pound, it does, I think, raise a lot of issues and feels like it could be a recipe for disaster, because it would be something that could be tracked and could be, it could be used against people. And I wonder, how do you come down on that? And what are as much as you can talk about it, are there conversations like that in this forum that you guys are having?
Yeah, so the engagement forum that the Bank of England put together a few years ago was a really mixed group of academics and lawyers and industry people from payments and banking and central bankers. That I've been really privileged to be part of some of those conversations and learn more about. Personally, I very much share a lot of the concerns that you raised. And I certainly don't view CBDCs even in the same category as crypto. Mm-hmm. I view them as a technological progression of our current fiat monetary systems, rather than really being related to crypto. There are certainly a lot of concerns for me around privacy, around, restricting people's behavior, controlling things, that I think are really important. And that's one of the reasons that I feel very privileged to have been part of that group, is to have the ability to raise some of those issues. It's not because I'm all in on the idea that everything should be a CBDC, but it's because I think that we need voices around the table who bring different perspectives to what a CBDC could and should be. And different governments around the world are approaching these things in different ways. It's been really interesting to study how some people are approaching this. I think that there is somewhat of an inevitability of this, purely because the way that our monetary system works today is very antiquated, very little control for central bankers, not in the privacy sense, but just in terms of quantitative easing and things like this. And a ton of inefficiency. And so I think putting fiat currencies onto blockchain in the form of CBDCs has the potential to create much more efficient and effective monetary systems. We just have to be incredibly mindful about how we do that and how we use them.
Do you think it could be a private-public partnership here? In the United States, there's a project called the U.S. Digital Dollar Project. It's run by Chris Giancarlo. He's former head of the CFTC. And I wonder, because I hear you on the efficiency gains that would be made here. If you think about, correspondent banking or just the way that so much money moves around the world every day, it would be so much quicker. There would be so many fewer mistakes and so much more efficient if it was on blockchain rails. That's kind of, I think, hard to debate. But again, but I wonder if we put a private entity in the middle of that, where the U.S. government, was supplying the digital dollars, but it had no look in to what people were using it for. That's something that's kind of been in the back of my mind that might be a good compromise.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think ultimately it's also worth thinking about that even those private institutions today, if the US government wants to know what you've spent your money on, they can go and ask for that information. And so even the fiat systems that we have today maybe don't give us the privacy that we intuitively think that we have by using them. I think that the reality is that the implementation of many of these CBDCs is going to follow just like digital fiat currencies in the way that it is today, right? So in the UK, we have like the M1 money supply, which is the central bank digital currency, or the central bank fiat currency. And then on top of that, we have commercial money, e-money. And there are many different licensed institutions who can issue e-money. And I imagine that the implementation of CBDCs in many places will follow this system exactly. I don't think it necessarily erases the privacy concerns that we have, because again, if a licensed institution is part of the private sector, is ultimately observing what you're doing, then the government normally has the right to be able to see that, even if they're one step removed. So I don't think it solves all the issues entirely, but I certainly think that it solves some of them, and I certainly think that that's the likely path forward. Yeah,
that's a great point. And then I guess we're kind of seeing in real time here what China's doing with this. They're somewhat far along in their pilot program, I believe, on the digital yuan. So, I mean, I think everybody knows where that's headed. But I'm just hoping that I feel like I agree with you that it's a separate thing from crypto. I don't necessarily think they're the same, but I think it would be a kind of a black eye or kind of a stain on crypto if it was used for things that could increase the real-time amount of surveillance and the real-time ability to not allow you to pay for certain things that the government doesn't want you to pay for. That scares me.
Yeah.
Okay, let's dig into WalletConnect. Tell me, just give me the elevator pitch of it, the 30,000 foot view, and then what I'd love to know, like, I know you've only been there for a few years, but what is the problem that you guys are solving?
What we're doing is we're focusing on usability of crypto. We're trying to build the usability layer that I think crypto really needs. It was started back in 2018 by Pedro, who's our founder. And it started off as something that many people in Web3 are now very familiar with, which is the ability to connect a mobile wallet to a desktop application. So when people think of WalletConnect, they think of our QR code, allows any of our 600 odd wallets that we've got integrated into the platform to connect with any app that's also using WalletConnect. This saves the needs for like thousands and thousands of individual connections, and creates this like very easy end user experience, gives them choice over the wallet that they use, choice over how they interact with the application. And that's been the starting point for WalletConnect and continues to be our focus. We've expanded a lot on how we do that, thinking about different standards that we can implement to make those connections better, thinking about different other user experiences that people want to have within crypto. How do they sign transactions? How do they make sure that they are secure and safe when they do that? How do we establish not only mobile to desktop connections, but mobile to mobile connections with our deep linking, or desktop to desktop connections with a standard called EIP 6963 that we collaborated with the industry on? Basically, like, how do we give end users choice and control? Because this is what's going to lead to better usability for them. And when I see the future of WalletConnect, it's partly around making sure that we're building this in a decentralized way. And that's a big strategy for us this year. And it's partly about how we continue to push the boundaries on user experience. And I think that there are so many ways that that's important, whether that's around payments, how you're managing your identity, controlling your data. There's just an infinite number of problems that we have to solve here at WalletConnect.
If I'm on a website on my laptop that has the ability to connect a wallet to it, and there's the QR code, and I scan it to connect my wallet, that's maybe my MetaMask is on my phone. You guys are the technology behind that? You're facilitating that connection? Do I have that right?
Exactly. So The way to think about the network is that our wallets integrate what we call our web3 wallet SDK. This prescribes a bunch of standards about the types of messages and the communications that can take place between apps and wallets. And on the app side, they integrate some form of our app SDK or integrate with a partner SDK. There are a bunch of different SDKs that sit on the app side of the network. And these fundamentally allow wallet and app to communicate with each other. They allow the app to send requests like sign a transaction or connect your wallet, and they allow the user in the wallet to accept and act on those transactions.
Okay. And that you've got a ton of customers for that. That's what you guys, your bread and butter, what you've been doing for years. But you mentioned this move towards decentralization, and that is, I think, a multi-year project that you're now kind of in the mid, or you've begun it, if I read that correctly.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Why do you guys feel it's important to go that route? And just if you could just kind of outline the roadmap just briefly, I think that'd be really interesting to hear about.
Ultimately, I think we're all here because we're building a more decentralized world, hopefully, where there are less intermediaries that are in control. And WalletConnect is one of those today, in the sense that all of these messages, all of these connections go through our server. Now, we take a lot of pride in making sure that those are secure and safe. But ultimately, a lot of people rely on us within the industry. A lot of apps and a lot of wallets are reliant on this infrastructure. And by having it run and operated by a single entity, there is a certain degree of risk that comes along with that.
Yeah, one of the things is it's not supposed to be a central point of failure, right? That's one of the sort of promises of crypto.
Exactly. And so for a long time, it's been both the aspiration of our founder, Pedro, to make sure that this is decentralized, and also a request from the industry that we make this decentralized and that we make this into something that is truly a public good and can be utilized and owned by the community that's building and using the protocol. And so when we think about that evolution and the sort of path to decentralization, firstly, I would say that we're very pragmatic. It's why it's taken us quite a long time to get to where we are today, and why I think it will be a long time until something like WalletConnect can be fully permissionless and fully decentralized. But it's certainly our aspiration, and we put a lot of resources behind that. Because of the type of database that we have, because of our latency, our security requirements, our throughput requirements, it's taken a huge amount of technical investment to get us to where we are today, which is that we are just about, here's the alpha, I guess. We're just about to add our first third-party node operators to the ecosystem, which is in line with the plan that we published earlier this year, where we will have people launching and testing in this permissioned network, ultimately looking to add more and more node operators to that until it can hopefully eventually become fully permissionless. But there's a lot of work until we can get to that state. But at least we know in the relatively near term, we should be running this together with several other of our partners in the industry. And that's a step that I'm really excited about.
Okay, cool. So you guys are going the third-party node route rather than I was thinking prior that it would maybe be decentralized servers or something like that, where it's not like Amazon, web services. That must be the challenge then, is right, getting enough nodes out there to run the system and reliably run the system and make sure that everything you said about security and protocols are maintained.
I would say we're very fortunate, maybe because of how long we've been around and the number of partners that we've got in the ecosystem, that there are an awful lot of people who are keen to support the decentralization of WalletConnect. And so getting people who have appetite to run nodes for us has been relatively easy. It's definitely a technical challenge to make sure that firstly, the database that we can run in a distributed way is working, and that's now in production and it's working very well. And so we are now reaching the point where we can add those third parties, but naturally there'll be a huge amount of testing and making sure that that system is robust before we can extend that group.
Okay. We mentioned this earlier. It's this thing. It's not a great name. I don't think crypto folks are very good at naming anything, to be honest. But it's account abstraction, which is a long-winded way or a convoluted way of saying that now wallets can be based on smart contracts rather than, I guess it was a custodial wallet. What was I don't know what the terminology was sort of for what you would have on MetaMask, but it's basically
like an EOA.
You send or receive, right? Basically are the limits. With account abstraction, you've got smart contracts. You can now obviously program all sorts of things into the wallet functionality. How do you, are you guys starting to integrate this, or how do you see this as someone in the wallet space? And are there any projects or things out there that have really just really impressed you?
So I think that this account abstraction or this smart account movement is really important for the industry because it's ultimately how we can create better user experiences. I think a big part of what's driving it, aside from just the ease and the security, is the ability to do things like have apps sponsor gas for transactions, batch transactions. These also just create wildly different and better user experiences for end users. So I think it's really exciting that we're moving in this direction. Obviously at WalletConnect, we do have a wallet product. We have a universal embedded wallet product that we can offer to apps, but our core is working with all the other wallets out there. And so we continue to work with a range of EOAs, MPC wallets, custodial wallets, and now smart accounts. We've partnered very closely recently with the Safe team on the work that they're doing, but also with Biconomy and Third Web and many others on the work that they're doing on the smart accounts front. And for us, we take the same philosophy here, which is that we have no aspiration to be the wallet, to sort of own the end user. But in order to deliver good end user experiences and good experiences for app developers, it's important that we have some sort of shared set of standards that these systems work on and run on, so that I don't have a totally different experience if I'm using one wallet to another. And as an app builder, I don't have to build totally different experiences for the 10 different smart account wallets that are out there, but they can all interact with my app in the same way. So the role that we're playing at WalletConnect, I hope, or contributing to, certainly not playing in a sole form, is making sure that we have these discussions for these shared standards. We do a lot of work to bring those partners together. We had a great hack week in March. We have another one coming up in June where we invite core contributors to some of this progress together. We spend a week shut in a room talking about standards and how we can improve user experiences. And these are really great moments for us and I hope for our partners too. And it's really exciting to see the progress there. It's also been fun to see how the progress on the smart accounts side has influenced some of the thinking around these EOA wallets. What are the standards that we now need to put back into the EOA side to develop equally as good user experiences? Vitalik has picked up on a lot of this recently, few new EIPs coming out from him. And so I think it's great because ultimately what it's doing is it's putting more of a focus on how we create better user experiences, which is certainly what we need.
It's really interesting. You were mentioning colored coins earlier, and I think Vitalik joined that team for a short period of time in Israel when he was kind of kicking the tires on Ethereum and what to do. He was trying to see what Bitcoin, what the limits are, or if it could be expanded. And it's kind of like this full circle sort of thing. And so I love that. And I wonder, you've been around for a few cycles. I've been asking this of folks that I'm talking to. We're in a bit of a bull market now. And I've always thought that these come around when there's a new development or a new breakthrough that kind of draws in a whole new group of users. Like we were talking about the art scene with like the NFT kind of breakthrough when everything went crazy. Are you seeing, I think the Bitcoin ETF might be one catalyst that is recent to this bull market, but I'm on the fence about whether that feels fundamental enough to me, or how you've been, in this space for a long time. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think this is just like a mini bull and then there'll be more, or how are you sort of looking at the medium to long term right now?
If only I had a crystal ball. I think that for me, funnily, this cycle does feel a little bit different, maybe than some of the other cycles where we've just had NFT bull run or DeFi summer or, whatever it's been. And I think that's because rather than like one single catalyst, and maybe it's just that we haven't seen the single catalyst that's going to kick us into the next like hyper cycle, but rather than like one catalyst, we've seen a number. And you mentioned the Bitcoin ETF. I think that was really important, partly for capital flow reasons, but partly just to legitimize Bitcoin and legitimize the industry. I think it's done a huge amount there. We still face a lot of headwinds in other places, but I think in some ways that's been very positive. I also think that for me, the like true mass adoption of crypto comes when we stop labeling everything as crypto. People are going to be using this as a technology without knowing what it is, necessarily how it works. Again, I hope that we convert some of them to being, fighters for the self-sovereign cause also. But the reality is that many, many people out there will end up using crypto without knowing it. In the same way that people use the internet, but they don't know how the internet works. They're just using an application that they find useful. And I think we're beginning to see that, right? We're beginning to see people moving money around the world, and crypto is actually at the back end of that. They just don't know it. We're beginning to see gameplay that creates totally different gameplay because it can use crypto, but it doesn't talk about the fact that it's a crypto game or that it's using NFTs. It's just embedding this in the game and the game loop design. We are beginning to talk about crypto collectibles just as collectibles. I can collect a digital trading card rather than a crypto NFT trading card. Airlines issuing loyalty points on crypto. Time and time again, we're seeing now the spread of use cases. It's still incredibly early days, but I guess, and maybe this is the optimist in me, I like to think that as we begin to see this is what is ultimately creating the sort of like renewed interest in crypto, is that it's finding its product market fit in many, many different places rather than in one of these niche things. Again, maybe it will come. Maybe we'll have a summer of something or a winter of something else. But maybe also this is the start of like much wider adoption as well. I
wanted to touch back on just what you were saying before. I love hearing about how you're working with the industry and you're getting their feedback and they're saying, we want you to decentralize, and here we will help you and support you and let's all work together, because I think that narrative doesn't get out enough. And it's like, I love talking to builders such as yourself, because that's what you guys are doing. And that's why all this infrastructure is there now, why new things are being built and why things keep improving. And it's such a powerful, I think, antidote to like, oh, crypto is nothing but a scam. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's only for speculators. And it's hard to, I think, articulate that argument sometimes, because you do need to know a little bit about the industry and what's going on in the background to explain to people, no, this is like, people are dedicating their lives to it and their careers to it. And this is happening all the time.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And thank you for just shedding a light on that kind of perspective about how there are so many people who want this to work, and they're working their asses off to make it a reality. And it's not just, the latest pump and dump scam that you get in your Telegram channel. So,
yeah.
But Jess, this has been fantastic. So fascinating. And I'm going to get you that badge, the Antiquities Trafficking and Art Crime, so you can just whip that out. Maybe it'll get you into an after hours party or so. I don't know what it could be used for, but
I love it.
Yeah. Best of luck with WalletConnect, and tell folks, like, if they want to get involved, if they want to check out more about you and about WalletConnect, how they can do that.
Thanks. I'm Jess Houlgrave on Twitter. You can follow us at WalletConnect on Twitter, or X as it should be now. Everything that we do at WalletConnect is open source. And so we also just really welcome feedback from the community, contributions, people who want to build with us. Please reach out.
It looks like maybe the time is for sailing now. So hopefully you can get out on the water sometime soon. But until then, thank you so much, Jess. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for joining us. And make sure to subscribe and rate us at Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Decent People is a production of Decential Media. It is produced by Curtis Fritsch, with music by Brian Duncan and Kareem Ives.